Continuing with my short Christmas Carol series on this fine Christmas Eve, we go to the 2009 3D animated motion capture film from Disney and Robert Zemeckis, starring Jim Carrey. And, like my last review, I'm not going to go into the story of Christmas Carol because really only 2 or 3 people in the world don't know the story, and they probably don't go online, so, you know. The main focus of the story is obviously Jim Carrey as Ebenezer Scrooge, who actually not only portrays him, but actually also portrays the 3 Christmas ghosts as well. Now, with Jim Carrey, I will admit that he's one of those actors that no matter how good he's doing or how great he's trying to be, I just see nothing but Jim Carrey. Which is odd because one time I even heard somebody mention that he's a method actor, but with method actors, I can usually, they can usually transform into the character, and I really won't recognize them. Just like I've told people on the channel before that I love Daniel Day-Lewis. That's a guy that I can never recognize whenever he's behind the camera. And I was really confused because when I think method actor, I think, I can't recognize them, but I always recognize Jim Carrey. And despite this, though, that I did notice that it was Jim Carrey, that it was just Jim Carrey, he does a good job as Ebenezer Scrooge. I mean, he's not the best Scrooge, but he's definitely good. I would say that he's somewhere in between the best Scrooge and the most over-the-top one, which I believe the most over-the-top one is Albert Finney. Now, I don't think that he does as good a job with the ghosts. The Ghost of Christmas Past has this strange Irish accent that's very breathy, and the Ghost of Christmas Present laughs way too damn much. They just come across as awkward in the end, and only the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, it's the only one that works, mainly because he's silent, but also for other reasons. I mean, with each of the ghosts, they actually come up with some pretty good and interesting ideas, but I'll get into those later. You've also got quite a few well-known British actors in this movie, like Gary Oldman in a couple of roles, including Jacob Marley and Bob Cratchit, Colin Firth as Scrooge's nephew Fred, and then Bob Hoskins, another actor that I can never see anybody else but, him. I can only see Bob Hoskins as Fezziwig, and they all do pretty well. And actually, now that I think about it, I was going to say Bob Cratchit. Bob Hoskins actually plays a couple of people in this movie, and hearing his voice really takes me out of the movie because he has just one of those unique and recognizable voices. So, every time I hear that voice, I just realize, oh, Bob Hoskins. Every Christmas Carol adaptation has done something new, either small scale or large scale, in order to help the viewer differentiate that version from the billions of other adaptations that have come before. And there's some interesting concepts in this one, and like other Christmas Carol adaptations, some of it works, and some of it just doesn't work. For instance, with the ghosts, and I'm going to be talking about each one because they each have pretty good concepts to them. First off, while I don't think that Carrey's performances as the ghosts is as good as his performance as Ebenezer Scrooge, I do like the fact that the ghosts of Christmas Past and Christmas Present actually resemble Scrooge in some ways, because that implies that the ghosts are merely an extension of Scrooge himself, or at least they're basically simple representations of him, and it makes it much more effective when they're quoting his lines back to him. Like everybody knows the scene where they're sitting in the Cratchit house and they mention some stuff about Tiny Tim and how he could die, and then Scrooge is like, oh no, he can't die, and then the Ghost of Christmas Present says something that he said earlier, and he basically says, well, if he is to die, he'd better do it, and decrease the surplus population. The way that the Ghost of Christmas Present transports Scrooge to the different locations is really something special. I mean, they're just in a room the entire time, and a portion of the floor is used as a sort of portal window or whatever, letting it seem as though they're flying through London, and I really enjoyed that. It's definitely something to see. I remember seeing this on the big screen when I was a kid, and I was completely mesmerized by it, and it still looks good on the smaller screen. The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, however, is my favorite when it comes to how they use him in the film. You never truly see him because he's not corporeal. He is literally a shadow, and I don't think I've ever seen that in any other film. You see him by looking at the wall or the floor. Hell, there's even a point where he's like being reflected off of bed sheets, and it's terrifying, but it really works, especially because of how scary he is supposed to be. Speaking of scary, when it comes to Christmas carols, this one is definitely, in my opinion, the most horror-based one. Like, this one actually feels like a horror film. They don't just showcase a fair bit of creepy imagery like the previous ones. This film revels in terrorizing people, especially because in the movie, they don't just scare Ebenezer, they scare the shit out of him. And I would actually say that the scares go to the point where it's way too over-the-top dark. And the point of the whole atmosphere of the original story from Charles Dickens was that there was a bit of a balance between the cheerful atmosphere and the scary one. And there are horror elements in there only so that you can appreciate the lighter moments when they come back at the end. But there's way too much darkness in this movie. Every time I watch the movie, when it gets back to the lighter stuff, I still feel uneasy, and I can't enjoy those moments, really, because of all the shit that I just witnessed. Hell, even the introduction of the Ghost of Christmas Past kind of unsettled me, because in other films, I've been excited to see them because there's always this warm glow to the situation, and it just feels very hopeful, the fact that the first ghost is here. And I mean, it's usually been betrayed by a woman or just a really, really nice guy who's just exudes happiness. You know, kind of like Clarence from It's a Wonderful Life. But in this version, it's just really upsetting, or it's really unsettling for me. I mean, he looks really cool, but it's the way that he moves and the way that he talks that's really creepy. And the part of the movie that I absolutely hate compared to the other versions, I actually think this is one of the worst scenes in any Christmas Carol adaptation, is the part where we must say goodbye to the Ghost of Christmas Present because he's fading away. Now, normally the scene is quiet, sad, and even quite peaceful, and the emotion is heavy because we are saying goodbye to somebody who was one of our favorite characters up to this point. But in this one, instead of naturally fading away into a kind of peaceful death, it seems like, they showcase Scrooge and the ghost in a bell tower. The bell strikes, signaling the coming of the next ghost, and the current ghost is having a heart attack. He then drops to the ground, he starts laughing with his very distinct laugh. His visage, his hair, and his skin, they all start aging rapidly. His skin is withering away, and then all of a sudden his skin starts to wither away as well, like rapid decomposing. I don't know why I was having a blanking moment, but all that's left in the end is his skeletal remains, and then they zoom the camera over his body, his dead body, and he's still laughing, and it's just a skeleton. That scared the shit out of me when I watched it, and because of that reason, I don't like watching it. I don't like watching the movie simply because of that scene, because it still terrifies me to this day. And shit like that, things that make the darkness seem way too much, make the moments where they try to add in a little bit of goofiness, they all come across as odd. That being said, when a moment is supposed to be creepy, it works extremely well. Just like what I said with the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. However, I would say that the best scary moment is the time between the door knocker turning into Marley and, actually seeing Marley in his room. That stair climb when Scrooge is going up to his room, that is absolutely terrifying, but at the same time, it's appropriate. The animation, as I said earlier, is a motion caption 3D animation, similar to the, it's the exact same style as Zemeckis had done in his Polar Express movie, and the animation was good at the time, but I would actually say that it's done better on Polar Express, and here's why. So, I did a review earlier this month on Polar Express, and I was pretty positive about it. I gave it a couple of nitpicks, but one thing that I didn't talk about was that, was one scene where the animation was just really jarring. and that was in the hot chocolate scene, which I like that one because it's fun. But if you compare the animation of motion capture next to actual CGI where they're doing really goofy stuff, it's really jarring, the difference. But like I said, I can still have fun in the moment because, you know, it was a nice, fun moment. In this film, it doesn't work as well. It's even more cartoonish. If the characters weren't so muted and darker throughout, you know, like the rest of the film, scenes like Fezziwig and his wife dancing wouldn't be as jarring as they are. And I remember every single time that I see that scene and they're just dancing, how horrible it looks. I always want to throw something like metallic at the screen. Like, there were actually a couple of times after I got out of high school, I watched the movie during Christmas, I actually wanted to break the TV because it looks like garbage. In the end, I'm down the middle when it comes to Disney's A Christmas Carol starring Jim Carrey. It's definitely not one of my favorites. In fact, I would actually say it's my least favorite of any Christmas Carol adaptation that I've ever seen. And I know that Mallory would hate hearing me say that because she likes the movie. I don't think that she, like, outright loves it, but I know that she definitely has a way better opinion of it than I do. However, I will reiterate that I do enjoy things in this movie. When it's good, it's really good, and then when it's bad, it's terrible. I'm going to give Disney's Christmas Carol starring Jim Carrey 2.5 reels. That'll do it for me. Thank you so much for watching me today, and I will be back tomorrow on Christmas Day with my review of, you know, the Christmas Carol that I think is the definitive one. It'll just be my opinion. And once that comes out, other than any reviews for new releases that come out in the theaters, other than those, I'm not going to be doing any reviews until at least mid-January because I want to break for a little bit. I've been doing this almost every week for the past few months, and it's kind of tiring. I may even decide after a while to just limit the posting to like 2 days instead of 3 or 4, because it does get tiring after a little bit, but I'll decide once the new year comes in. Anyway, as I said, thank you so much for watching. Farewell until the next video, and Merry Christmas.